Last night, there was a fairly large attack on Russia, shutting down air traffic around Moscow and doing some damage. I'll show you all of that and everything else that's going on. There wasn't an equivalent coming back the other direction. There was a small-scale Shahed attack, and it actually was more productive than usual, which I'll explain how that works in just a moment. Okay, so let's get started with this. Moscow suffers largest drone attack in months, with drone debris hitting residential buildings. The attack also forced the diversion of 134 commercial flights to alternative airports. So it was problematic if you were trying to fly around Moscow. At this moment, dozens of Ukrainian kamikaze drones are attacking Russian territory, targeting the regions of Kursk, Belgorod, Bryansk, Voronezh, Tula, Kaluga, Krasnodar, Rostov, and Moscow. Moscow is going to get the most attention, though. Russia in Moscow is feeling some of the consequences of their invasion of Ukraine. Zelenograd, 20 miles northwest of the Kremlin, a Ukrainian drone was intercepted over apartments. Again, there wasn't massive, this wasn't like a spiderweb kind of thing. It was more of a just shutting things down, like the airport. Very loud night in Russia. Overnight, drone attacks targeted Moscow region and other areas in Russia. Air defense systems were activated in response in many places. Explosions were heard, so some things were hitting, but it wasn't devastating. It was just more troublemaking for Russia. This is at an airport. The customers are pretty upset. Now they're asking me to pay an extra $980 for each ticket. What's going on? There should be at least some basic respect. Well, there's chaos at Moscow airports again. Mass flight cancellations and delays have started due to the threat of drone attacks. And it wasn't just a threat. They were real drone attacks, and it was creating a lot of chaos. The video shows the situation inside the airports. Flights are canceled. Passengers are waiting. Passengers are waiting for the flights for 10 to 12 hours, many sleeping right on the floor just because, well, where else are they going to go? Drone attacks triggered mass flight delays at Moscow's Sheremetyevo, Vnukovo, and Domodedovo airports, with twice suspended operations overnight. Aeroflot is now adjusting flight schedules due to ongoing restrictions. Again, yeah, this is just what we see. And now the traffic has just recently resumed back over the Moscow region, but it was such that it was pretty bad. Okay. Meanwhile, Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region, a train carrying hazardous chemicals exploded near the city of Dzержinsk, just 40 kilometers from major urban center of 1.2 million. So these don't tend to just happen. There tends to be something behind it, but I don't know what is behind it. Now, last night, Russia launched 57 of their own drones and decoys. Now, only 18 were downed and 7 suppressed. So that seems to be a pretty bad ratio. Part of that is when they're hitting in certain areas, they don't have the air defense, like around Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. That's different than if they're shooting at Kyiv or Kharkiv, where they have lots of air defense. So this is something that I've detected fairly recently seems to be a Russian strategy, is to go after, I don't want to say lesser cities. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but less well-defended cities because they're perhaps smaller. Okay, Russian tea campaign against Ukrainian civilians. It continues. On the night of 20 July, Russian drones killed a 78-year-old woman and ignited 3 homes in northeastern Sumy village on the front line. Okay, so what's the game plan for drones? That's what we want to understand here. German Major General Christian Freudling says Russians aims to be attacking Ukraine with 2,000 drones simultaneously. I think that's a goal. I think they're right now aiming at 1,000, and then ultimately they're going to try to get to 2,000 just to keep that ongoing pressure on to try to make the Ukrainian civilians say, "Uncle." I don't think that's going to work, but that's where we're going. Russia is seeking to expand its drone production capabilities and make its drone strikes even more massive. Among the measures to counter Russian attacks, the general mentioned early response strikes targeting Russian aircraft, military fields, and defense industry facilities. Now, that's kind of an interesting thing here that he's talking about it like that. One of the things that's been happening, and it's been kind of a newer thing, is that we're seeing this thing where like bombers are taking off from a longer distance away and being refueled. Like I saw something about like from almost near Japan, taking off from there, coming all the way over, being refueled, and then launching its cargo and turning around and going back. I think we're going to see more and more of that as time goes on, that the Russians really have to, like, they have to back way off in order to not have bad things happen to their bombers. Okay, so let's look more about what's going on here. Russia has revealed the scale of its Shahed production. Entire factory halls in Alabuga are dedicated to mass producing Shahed Garan 2 clones. This comes on the same day the German general warned about Russia's aim to launch up to 2,000 drones. So yeah, that's it. Now, there's something more to the story here. According to Christian Freudling, Ukraine was still receiving drone components from China just a few weeks ago, and I think that's still going on. However, right now, the situation is that China is effectively exporting solely to Russia, while Ukraine has been shut out of this market. And we see Zelensky talking about the same thing. President Zelensky and European officials cited by Bloomberg, China has ceased exporting drone components to Ukraine and is now directing its supplies primarily to Russia. Now, there's I'm sure still some Chinese parts getting to Ukraine, but China has weighed in on the side of Russia. Chinese firms accounted for 92% of all foreign source components in Russian attack drones. That's probably a lot because Russia's really pretty terrible at engineering. Okay, Russian forces conducted large series of missile and drone strikes against Ukraine on July 18th and 19th, but 19th to 20th, not so much. You see these very low ebbs and then a strike, very low ebbs and then a strike, very low ebbs and then a strike. And again, we had very low numbers last night, so there's going to be a couple of days of that and a big strike, generally speaking. Okay, this is General Jack Keane. He's from the ISW. He's talking about how the drone war is taking place. Listen to what he has to say about Ukrainian production and what they're trying to do, and listen to this.
2 million drones. This year is somewhere in the neighborhood to 4 to 5 million drones, and they're all different types, from the first-person vehicles, very small drones, killer drones, to much larger drones that can fly hundreds of miles. And they have intellectual.
So you're saying Ukraine is trying to get to 4 to 5 million drones? That's something.
Intellectual property and technology there that's going to be very important to us. You know, when you're at war, fighting for your survival, it has a tendency to focus the mind. Mm-hmm. And that is what has happened here. Their ingenuity, their imagination, their creativity has done this. Some of this just literally started in people's garages, trying to develop technology, and it's blossomed into an industry all of its own. And right. Russia is doing much the same. So drone warfare is dominating on the battlefield.
That's right. I keep telling you that's what this is all about. Let's talk about the battlefield. 1,040 Russians off the battlefield. That's reasonably low compared to the last few days. 3 tanks, 9 armored fighting vehicles, 52 artillery systems, 121 vehicles and fuel tanks. And if we look at Andrew Perpetua's list, it's still about 1.3, maybe 1.5 to 1 Ukrainian losses to Russian losses. This has been a bad trend over the last week or so. Engagements and casualties remain below average, according to Ragnar Gudmundsson's dashboard. But cross direction, Russian invaders conducted 36 assaults. That's correlated with the number of that we saw over here, this low ebb here, and the number of assaults here is that seems to be about right. Operators of the 45th Artillery Brigade neutralized an enemy ground robotic system packed with explosives that was being prepared for an assault on Ukrainian positions. That's a ground robotics system. That's why I allowed the thing to be shown here. And that's where we're going next. There's going to be ground robotics and along with aerial vehicles that'll be doing much of the fighting here, fighting each other and other people. Now, one of the things that's happening that's a really interesting trend is that there's this like there's a claim of victory way too soon very often. A claim for victory that's going to be like we've taken this ground, we have succeeded in capturing this area from the Russians, and then it wasn't actually taken, and then they throw their men into meat waves trying to make it happen. Let's look at this for just a moment. Here we have, ever wonder why the same village gets liberated 3 times in Russian reports? That's because on the front they have a special term, to capture a settlement on credit. Capture a settlement on credit. What are we talking about? First, the news loudly declares, we've taken it, victory. Then comes the bloody assault. Soldiers are thrown into a meat grinder to quickly justify the success that was already broadcast on TV. Now everything is on credit. Towns, lives. The only thing that matters is the triumphant headline. Like, that's really interesting that happens, but I've observed that happen more than once. Now, here we also see that 30,000 SBU colonel, his name is Roman Kostenko. He's from the Cyborgs, this group that was pretty famous back from 2014. 30,000 people are mobilized every month, says this SBU colonel, one of the renowned cyborgs who valiantly defended Donetsk airport in 2014. He's also secretary of the Committee of National Security, Defense, and Intelligence in the parliament. 30,000. So Ukrainians are being pulled into the army to replenish. So they're not there. It's just, it's an ongoing thing, and it's taking a toll. Now, remember, it's not, because it's drone warfare, it's not just about brawn on the battlefield. It's about technological prowess, or the technological capability to fly these drones or create these drones and that sort of thing. That's a big thing as well. Ground robotic systems are now an essential part of modern warfare. Ukrainian soldiers actively use such systems to evacuate the wounded, deliver ammunition, conduct reconnaissance. So this is going to be more and more a feature of modern warfare that's going to be more and more significant. Here's Robert Magyar Brody, commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He's being interviewed here saying, I led 12 units of drone pilots. 95% of them were civilians before the war began. They were businessmen, athletes, lawyers, singers, anyone you can imagine, but not military. Altogether, we make up 2% of Ukraine's entire army, yet we destroy 1 in every 3 enemy personnel and 1 in every 3 enemy targets. Putin, who promised to take us to victory in 3 days, has in 3.5 years only taught us how to defend our homeland, our children, and our land. Yeah. Again, the disproportionate, like, Ukrainian drones are punching way above their weight. Okay. In fact, here, this was interesting. This was a view in Seversk, Donetsk Oblast, of a drone watching a Ukrainian farmer harvest grain just 8 miles behind the front line. Here's the airstrike, and then you zoom over, and there's the farmer just going about his business harvesting. Like, well, it's got to get done. It's 8 miles away from the front line. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of punching above their weight, here's Alexander Usk. He's revealed his knockout of Daniel Dubois, I don't know which way it's pronounced, with a secret punch his team calls Ivan. It was this weird hook that kind of caught him in the temple. You could see when you see the replay, like he got staggered, turned his head, and then got hooked in the temple. And that's a rough place to be hit. Here is the world heavyweight champion, Usk, relaxing with a book before the big fight. That was endearing to me, warming my heart. Here's the big fight. I want to dedicate, he said after the fight, I want to dedicate my victory to Ukraine, to all the guys who are defending our country. I received a huge number of messages. Guys, glory to Ukraine. You are incredible. You allow me to be here right now. And this is how Ukrainian soldiers were watching this. I mean, they were setting up screens so that they could see what was going on with the fight. And I think, there's something to be said about motivation. Like on the front line, when you know that you're defending your family's behind you and the enemy's in front of you, that's a good day, right? I think there's something to the motivation for Usyk, doing this for his country that's giving him a bit of an advantage as well. Same thing with this guy, Ukrainian boxer Daniel Lapen scores his 12th professional win, defeating previously unbeaten Brit Lewis Edmondson by a split decision. He successfully defended his IBF Intercontinental Lightweight title. Same thing there. And I don't know if this is a real patch or if someone just created, but Usyk here. But this NAFO patch, even if it's not, this NAFO patch is real. Jake Bro, save the donkeys. Save the donkeys? Yeah, Jake Bro and his community are teaming up with NAFO 69 Sniffing Brigade for the 5th campaign, having now completed $4 million campaigns together. Yeah, listen to Jake talk just for a moment.
We're going to launch our next channel fundraiser to benefit Ukraine today. And the goal, once again, is $1 million. Now, $1 million is a lot of money. I know this. But I also know this YouTube community can do it because we've done it 4 separate times.
So this is the $5 million campaign. He's already raised $233,000 toward that in about, well, when I saw it, it was about 12 hours. So yeah. Okay. I'll put the link below if you want to donate and to the Jake Bro Save the Donkeys patch campaign. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.